In 2020, Thai Airways declared itself bankrupt due to the ongoing pandemic. And they immediately turned the steering wheel into selling fried bread or odating as they were called in Thailand, and it is said that the franchise became a great success. In Australia, the airlines Qantas also did not want to be outdone. It turned out, they created a special program of sightseeing by plane, where you can fly from one airport in Australia there, take a sightseeing plane and return to the same airport. In Singapore, namely Singapore Airlines, it is also not to be outdone that they changed their Boeing A380 which was parked at Changi Airport as a restaurant, where you can order a place and enjoy the food provided there. The price is not cheap, but within 30 minutes everything is sold out. That's a small part of the tactics that friends in the aviation industry are doing to outsmart the crisis. The question: what about your company? How do you outsmart the crisis that is happening in your industry? Let me share 9 innovative tactics that can be used to outsmart the crisis. Let's just get us together. So, what are the 9 innovative tactics noon business can do to outsmart the crisis? There are 9 ways. Frankly, my most favorite is the 9th, because it's the most radical, so make sure you watch it all the way to the 9th one. Okay, let's start from the first tactic, which is to follow the changes in behavior of customers. Whose name is that customers are human beings, and when in a crisis, let alone a pandemic, their needs must change. For example, during the pandemic, people tend not to leave the house, limit themselves, so what happens in the automotive industry? In particular, this case is Astra Auto Parts. He realized that their customers who usually go to their workshop for motor service no longer come, drastically the decline. Then they realized that the need was still there, but there were obstacles from customers. Hence, their initiative is that they are really fully invested in home service, where their technicians may be those who come to their customers' homes to service their motor vehicles for battery changes, oil changes, and so on. And it turned out that the decision was fruitful, even during the pandemic. The second tactic is that we need to identify new opportunities that open where there is one closed door. Another door is open, and we have to find that open door. For example, back in the automotive industry, only this time is about that buying and selling automotive. The sales of new cars in those days dropped drastically. Reasonable. Why? Because people have no reason to buy a new car anyway. They are not going anywhere either. And even if they have money but want to save the money just in case in the midst of an uncertain situation, but OLX Auto conducted a survey and found that the sales of used cars actually went up, especially after the pandemic. And finally, they also did this business significantly. Even they created a digital application to make it easier for potential buyers to choose their cars. Then check the car until there is a transaction that occurs in that application, and it just so happened that they discovered that the other player had nothing to play in the digital aspect of this, because they feel that it is too complicated to be complex and the payment is backwards for too long. This is actually a new opportunity for OLX to be able to actually play in this area, and it has proven to be a sweet fruit for OLX, and even during the pandemic. The third is that we need to tailor our product portfolio to the needs of customers in the time of that crisis. A concrete example is Sharp that he predicts that people in the midst of a pandemic, they don't want to get out of the house. Then they also have limited shopping, maybe a month only 2 times, or at least once a week. Then they should have a place to store all the groceries. Vegetables, fruits means that it seems that sales from this refrigerator will increase, because the need is still there. And it turned out to be true. Once they produced the refrigerator, a lot of sales were also a lot of it including their products related to the phasma cluster, because the people in the midst of the pandemic wanted to make sure that the air was healthy, so away from bacteria, from viruses, and they invested in that product and came back to fruitful as well. Even during the pandemic, they can still make a profit. The number 4 tactic is that we need to optimize the use of digital technology. If this seems to be yes, what's more, where we are difficult to meet people directly. Fortunately, Alliance has been developing digital technology long ago. Once they entered the pandemic, people were still able to interact with Alliance. In fact, they can still apply for a policy using this digital application. 93% of those policy submissions occurred on their digital channels. During the harvest period, communication to customers 90% was also through digital, and the issuance of the policy was 40% also through the electron channel. It is natural then that in the second quarter of 2020, aka recording a positive achievement with a significant premium gain of 6.605 trillion rupiah. To the 5th tactic is that we have to explanatory with unusual selling capital. For example, Mitra Adi Perkasat is a group that houses a lot of retail brands, both international and local. They realized that with the closure it makes their retail sales drop out. So they focused on selling through their digital channels and they invested in those digital channels, and they saw that the growth was really good, even after the mall reopened, which digital sales continued to rise, but they realized that it was not enough. Then they also instrumentate again in other ways, end up not only focusing on the mall, they are looking for a non-traditional one that is outside the mall. In fact, they experimented to have a driver-through kayak. The bottom line is we don't know what our customers are going to do and how they feel comfortable interacting. Yes, that's why we just dabble in various methodologies until we find the most fitting pattern that our customers can comfortably do, and we in our business can still live through that path. The sixth is that we need to adjust our pricing plans to the situation of the customer. For example, it's Marky. This Marky is a company that provides office space, which he usually rents out that per meter. In times of pandemic or uncertain crisis, people don't want to take long-term investments. So if for example I have rented 1,000 meters, but it turns out that I have to reduce labor, it will be very loss-making. Eventually they changed the pricing plan not per meter but per person, and it can be flexible every month, it can be replaced so if for example I have 50 employees this month, next month it will be reduced to 20, so pay only 20. If the employees go up again, just add more. Indeed, that flexibility is what answers the problems of customers, and Marky is still able to make sales even during the pandemic. The seventh is that we may need to modify our product or service so that we can concentrate on the addresses of our customers. An example is in the hospitality industry, hotels in particular, which during the pandemic was quite impactful. Finally, they have creativity. They have a package called a Staycation. We're aware that many people who have started to get bored are at home. He wants to find a new atmosphere, but they are not too expensive it is. And they still want to be safe from that COVID, and finally make Staycation, which is renting out rooms for a long period of time only to fall cheaper per night and limiting the number of people in the hotel to be more private. The hotel is so that people are comfortable there. There are even hotels that offer WFH, but it is not but a hotel, so facilitate a comfortable place, good working facilities, so if you are bored working at home just go to the hotel. This eighth, we have no choice. Actually, it's not just about changing our product or our business model. We also have to change how our team works. Their work patterns are so. This is an example not from a multinational company or a national private sector. Yes, I give an example directly to government agencies only. The Directorate General of Taxes is probably very traditional, but they also end up during the crisis for the sake of that they significantly make changes to the work patterns of their employees. Everything moved into the digital world, some were at home, some were in the office, then the work was also changed, the document was in the store on the server that everything could access, the security was high, but at the same time it was also possible that health protocols were maintained. The bottom line is you also have to make sure that your team is working in the most effective way in the midst of uncertain situations, and that digital becomes a tool that you have to adopt. The ninth that I said was the most interesting. Why? Here I mentioned first the tactic is that we have to play in a living market. Why is this important? Since many of us are already like dead lice. Why? Because the market is dead. An example is PT Bandagara Reksa, a very large expedition company that he used to serve in business to business. But it turned out that the business that he was a customer of was no longer operating in times of crisis during the pandemic. What then? It's dead. It means it's the market. That's why he searched the market that was just now, who was still alive, and they found the government turned out to be alive, like government projects, the Ministry of Cooperatives, SMEs turned out to be alive, and they also saw that ISMEs in the big city were also still squirming. There was still why not just serve them? And imagine BGR, which is a big company and is now moving to SMEs. They help farmers in the area so that they can bring their crops to SMEs in Jakarta. Why? Because they found that farmers were bothered to distribute their products to Jakarta. There was a limit that the land route was closed everywhere. Meanwhile, logistics companies can still pass the toll road and serves BGR, and at least BGR can survive. That's what we are looking for, at least in times of crisis, at least survived first. Thankfully later we can meet new business opportunities, we can grow. So that's 9 innovative tactics for businesses to circumvent the crisis. And I pray that you can find at least one of these 9 that can be useful for your business. Maybe you should combine some of them so that you can not only live in times of crisis, but what is even better is to be able to get out of the crisis stronger than before. May the benefits be